Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for being here. I have two announcements before starting. We have a... Is it good? Yeah, okay. So you can still order T-shirts. You have to log into your Oxford Abstracts area, and then you can order your T-shirts. You can also upload pictures. You have a QR code outside at the registration desk, and then you can upload the picture. Welcome to this session. It's the Contributory People in Collections. I'm Theary Ung. I'm your moderator, along with Ellie Wallis here. We would like to thank the generosity of our sponsors, particularly the Diamond sponsors. We are grateful to them, and we are grateful to Hockey Congress for today's tech support. This session will be recorded for later viewing, and we would like to ask all our speakers to please speak slowly so that everyone can understand online and in the room. We'll have 3 full talks today and 1 lightning talk, which will give a little more time at the end of the session so that we can raise any question, any topics that we'd like to talk about. And the first speaker is Paul Meyer.
Thank you. All right, so I'm Paul Meyer. Does this one work? Nope, I don't know which one's better. All right, so I'm Paul Meyer. I'm the Fossil Invertebrate Collections Manager at the Field Museum in Chicago, and I'm going to talk a little bit about an IMLS Devonian grant. We've actually had 3 of these, and so I'll have a little bit of information on all 3, but right now we're in the middle of the 2nd year of a 3-year Devonian project, digitizing, thanks to the good folks at the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And so this is what we've done since I've started there working on these in 2012. The big red group here is our first IMLS project. This was for the Silurian reef material. Then the second project would be the Ordovician IMLS, and then we're currently here, and I don't have quite the 2nd year. You can see here's where the pandemic was. And then we have some smaller projects of stuff that came in. I should also mention that we're in partnership with the Milwaukee Public Museum, and for both of these, so they're doing the same type of stuff in Milwaukee as we are. We are both partners on all 3 of these grants. And so then, are we actually making some progress? And so we have about 350,000 specimen lots. I'm not too worried about 120,000 of them. There are a lot of stratigraphy collections and bulk samples and a lot of stuff that hasn't been processed much. So I'm more concerned about this top part. And you can see I started in 2008. We had 2 big collections that were donated to the museum that make it a little blip that shows that increases. But we're making pretty good progress. We're actually starting to see we're starting to, not quite halfway where I'd like to be, but we're making some progress. So this kind of made me happy when I looked at it, just to see that it is getting a little bit bigger. If I showed this whole thing, it doesn't look like much. That's why I kind of cut it off. Then also when I started, there were 0 number of images in the database. And so now we have well over 100,000, 110,000 images. And so that's a big difference. We image not only the actual fossils, but we also image the labels, which I think is probably more important, because that lets you find out where the errors, if it's our typing or it was already an error on the label. And the labels are by far the most delicate part of the whole thing. And so one thing that really helps is having a really good partner. I can run off ideas, and I always talk to PJs. This is Patricia Burke at the Milwaukee Public Museum, and it's really handy to have a colleague to talk with, find out how they're doing, and swap ideas, and just ask questions and compare notes. And so that's been really important in these projects, to be able to have a good friend and a good colleague that you can try these things off of. Milwaukee's, this is their collection, and they're much more focused on the lower part of the Paleozoic, from the Cambrian on up to the Devonian. And the Field Museum, we're really focused the Ordovician to the Pennsylvanian. The Mazon River, or Mazon Creek, and Pennsylvania and Mississippi are all part of the Carboniferous. And so by far the Carboniferous is the biggest collection we have. But if you split them up, then the Devonian is. So we completed the Ordovician and Silurian with the green checks. We're working on the Devonian. The Mazon Creek material was digitized in the early 80s, but only text. And so we have no images from that. Well, we have some now, but not a whole lot. And then some of our type collection has been imaged and digitized, but some of it has not been. So that's sort of something that needs to be gone through too. The other thing that's really handy is having a great technology department. Many of you will probably, Sharon Grant is here in Okinawa right now. Kate Webbink, this is their boss, Rob Zernitz. And there's Peter Herbst. All of these folks have helped tremendously. And Janine Jones, I don't have a good photo of Janine, but they've all been really handy. And it's handy to have a great technology team where if something goes wrong, they can help out. If you have a question or you say, how can I do this? They can come in and say, here, you can try this. This will work better than what you're doing. And so they've been extremely helpful, and that really makes all of our grants successful. It would be very difficult to do this without that. This is a big Silurian reef, a 300-foot tall reef at Thornton Quarry, right close to Chicago. So a lot of nice fossils there. Then I have great teams of interns, and I try to include them all. Here you can see this. This is the last group from this summer who had to end a little bit early because I was going to Okinawa. And this is the other team from the Devonian. We had some virtual interns who worked from home during the pandemic. And we have a variety of different things, women in science, IMLS, some independent folks who got money from their universities or colleges to come to the museum and do work. And we've also had some really good illustrators. And here's Alex. You'll see some of her illustrations in just a bit. But she does amazing work for us. We put that up on the webpage because coming from the Midwest, you can talk about a shell from an ammonite or a trilobite, and people don't know what it is. But when they see the picture, that tells 1,000 words instantly, so it's really nice. Here's my interns from this last summer. They presented a little poster on their work and worked very well. This is a record number of interns, 5. Normally I have 3 or 4, so we actually got an extra computer and was able to accommodate 5 interns this summer, so it was a little busy. And then probably one of the best assets I have, he was supposed to come here, but he couldn't make it. This is Monty, and he actually was stationed here during the Vietnam War at one of the Air Force bases. He is a volunteer and amateur photographer, and he has 45 images. Actually, that's 45 fossil invertebrate images. He has another 40,000 receptaculites images in our database. And so he's been coming in twice a week for many years now, doing a great job. And next year, if you're at Kansas, I'm going to make sure he gives a presentation on how to photograph fossils. And he does some really good, he works on the workflows and everything for the interns, so he's all around been really handy. It's hard to get him out of the shadows there, but I got one photo of him. And here's Alex, and she's a scientific illustrator, and these are some of the Devonian ones she has done. A crinoid, this is a Melocrinus from Milwaukee. I actually did, against my better judgment, I had a non-invertebrate, but just because they're kind of showing these lived in Milwaukee too. This is sort of the closest Devonian to the Chicago, so we tried to highlight that. If I have time, you'll see a picture of the actual fossil, this one at the end, some atropid brachiopods, some nice trilobites. I got another page of her work just because it's nice, and who doesn't want to look at that? Mucrospirifer and Orthospirifer, a Phacops elderjops, a funny little cephalopod that's got a strange shaped cone, and a bivalve. We've had very few bivalves in the fossil record, but the Devonian has some nice ones. So this one is from the Milwaukee Formation too. And then Dr. Ralph Kugler, he's retired. He worked for the oil companies and did a lot of 3D visualization of large-scale oil fields and also really small porosity studies. And so he's from Milwaukee, and he set them up with how to do 3D photogrammetry, and he came down to Chicago, and we got a very similar setup. And he worked with one of our interns, Avery Williams, who applied for one of my data entry jobs, but on her resume it said did a lot of 3D computer programming or video game stuff. You can see how well I know that. And but she came in and did a wonderful job because I knew very little to nothing about it, and she was able to piece together a lot of it, and Ralph came down a couple times to help us out. And so we now have a 3D photogrammetry a setup, which we didn't even include in the grant, so we're making some nice Devonian fossils. We use Agasoft, and then you just kind of rotate the fossil twice. They call them orbits. And so you get about 72 photos in one way, and then rotate the fossil and get the other way, and then the computer program stitches them together, and you get these neat little 3D fossils. These happen to be mostly Silurian ones. I don't have the Devonian ones up yet. Actually, Avery made this slide, and I don't know how she did it, so that's why I didn't add any Devonian ones. And then this slide came to me as I was talking to NAPC in Michigan earlier this summer. Someone asked me about how we prevent errors from getting in, and I misunderstood their question kind of. And so this is the real way we do it. This is what the interns have to input into our database, EMU. And so the green ones are automatically set up right away, so they don't have to enter that as a fossil invertebrate, and it's in the main catalog and a hand sample. Occasionally they do discover a type specimen that's been misplaced, but for the most part this doesn't change. I should have put a 24 IMLS one, but it's got 23. And then the main catalog hand specimens, these are automatically input in. The yellow ones are drop-down lists, so or stuff that's already in the database. And if it's not in the database, if they want to add a specimen, a species name, a location, or a formation, then they can't add it into the database because I don't want a lot of misspellings, I don't want a lot of typos and that kind of stuff. And so they put it into a Google spreadsheet, and I look at that during the long, hard Chicago winters and go through and add all that on my own. I'm not sure how else to do that, but it's a little bit slow, but it also lets me find the synonyms and start updating our taxonomy, which is really old, from the turn of the century, and not the newest turn of the century. And so that's what we're doing there. And then the red ones are stuff they can actually enter, but they're very seldom. The only red things they really enter is the number of pieces and specimens in a box, and the catalog numbers, and then if it came from a particular collection. Most of the time they don't know the morphology or lithology, so they don't do a lot. And they do add collection notes. If there's something on the label that's not included in here, I tell them anything that's on the label that you can't figure out how to put in the EMU, put there just so that we have all the information. And so that's how we prevent errors, is that it's mostly just all drop-down menus. And there's a talk, I can't think of the name, but the vocabularies, so it's kind of that way. This is an older slide, but it just shows you when we upload fossils, upload records into EMU, the percentage of errors we get, which was relatively small. But I'm going to go into exactly what these errors are and what that means. And this is going to get a little bit confusing because my desktop is confusing. I could have did a better job of organizing this. But when I first do it, we have the images of the labels stored on a hard drive somewhere in the cloud or something, and we upload them. And I don't expect to get any errors here because it's just uploading that. So if there's an error in this part, it's me because I typed in the wrong location of where the specimen is. And then EMU generates a little report, and you can see these are the multimedia images that were uploaded. And then this is what they're linked to. And so when we first upload them, they're linked to nothing. So it should all be blank. On the next phase, EMU generates something so I can run this into the catalog module, and this will link the multimedia IRN to the catalog record. And this is where I get the errors. And so here on this one, we had 219 records, and there's 3 errors. There's actually more errors, and I'll show you how I catch the extra errors. But sometimes it gets clean, sometimes there's 1 or 2 errors like that, so it's not a tremendously slow process or anything. Yeah, this is where it's messy. So all I really want to do is talk about 2 types of errors. So here, this is that multimedia, and here it's showing what's all linked, but you got 2 records here that did not link, and we'll talk about this one, P16691, later on. And then here's the catalog record, and it's showing stuff that was linked, and they all should say Devonian. But, oops, 3 minutes, okay. But these are blank, the stratigraphy isn't there, so that's telling me there's something weird going on here. There's also one that says a bivalve. They should all be gastropods because this intern was working on gastropods, and really it should all be gastropods that start with a B or a C. And so the first one, I just opened up the record, and this says P16691. I did a search for 16691, and all I got was a PE, which was a shrimp from the Mazan River. So it turns out the intern actually skipped this and never entered that into the catalog, and that's why I didn't load. That happens a lot, or not a lot, but once in a while. You got a bunch of boxes in these drawers, and it's easy to forget which one you did. So I just typed this in and then link it, and that's an easy fix. Oftentimes P and PE are the problems, which we'll see in the next one. So this one is even messier, but this is how my desktop looks. And so this one here, the label is PE2313. I did a search for that, and we got a P2313, that's what it linked to, but the intern did enter PE2313. It just mislabeled the the multimedia record. And so that will link to the wrong thing. So in this case, I just delete the link to the specimen here, P2313, and make a new link to PE2313. And so it's really easy to spot on the spreadsheet when there's an error like this, just because it won't have a Devonian on it. There we go. The only problem I'm going to have is if it happens to link to a Devonian gastropod that's already in there, and that's where I'm going to have trouble. And the only way I can think of looking at for that is if that happens, it should have a whole bunch of images. Normally, there's only 2 or 3 images per record, and so if that one it should have 6 or 7 images that way. So that's how I can spot those errors. And then just some gratuitous fossil photos at the end. There's that one that Alex sketched. Some brachiopods just covered with epiphytes, nice pair of spearfoots. So these we put in as multi-specimens, and we might only name the arthropod, we won't know the rest of the fossils, and some nice starfish. Beautiful starfish, but when they mounted it, they put a metal clip right in where the soft tissue is. I have no idea why they would do that, but this was one of the early ones. This was part of the World's Fair collection. And with a little trilobite and a sponge. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much. Do we have 1 minute probably for a question, or do you want to go? Okay, so we should move on. Our next speaker is Renata Borosova. The floor is yours.
Okay. Better. Okay. Good afternoon, all. So I'm a curator botanist from Kew, and in addition to my full-time job in the curation team, I've been involved in this great project collaborating with Anna-Rita, Gabriel, and Chung. For the future of life on Earth, training the next generation of plant scientists is critical. This is also one of the priorities in Kew's Manifesto for Change, and so developing training programs to enhance taxonomic capacity in the most biodiverse countries became a priority for us. Meeting this demand in Africa was identified as an important step to accelerate documentation and subsequent conservation of African plant diversity. But do we need more taxonomists? Here is more information on age distribution of taxonomists, which also highlights the gap in number of taxonomists by country. This data comes from a survey we sent out with Anna-Rita and team, and it is soon to be published. From these charts, we can see that in several countries in Africa, there are only young taxonomists or students, on the slide here in yellow, and therefore mentorship opportunities are lacking, and in others, only older taxonomists exist in red and in dark red on these charts. These countries then lack young professionals or students to be mentored. For comparison, there is the chart for Europe, Americas, and Asia and Australia too. We are also looking at plant taxonomy training opportunities in different regions across the world. In blue, it's master's and bachelor's degree courses. In green, you can see modules on these courses. In orange are the short courses, and in pink, mentorship opportunities. As you can see, mentorship opportunities are lowest in Africa, and the short courses are also very low in Africa, but also in Asia and Australia. This confirms the need for additional training to fill these gaps. And lastly, one more chart from us. This is looking at access to herbarium collections, trying to figure out if this influences number of active taxonomists. We can see that access to large collections, the ones with over 1 million specimens, is mostly in Europe. In Asia, Americas, and Africa, most taxonomists have access to smaller collections. This could be affecting mentorship opportunities, since larger herbaria usually employ more people, which increases opportunities for mentorships. If there are more mentorship opportunities in Europe, could these be made available to taxonomists in other regions? Keeping all this in mind, team from Kew developed a funding proposal to Schroeder Trust and Mallinckrodt Foundation in 2020 with the idea of running a bespoke course in plant taxonomy, with the one in Ghana being the pilot course. This eventually ran in August 2022 in collaboration with University of Ghana. And these were the main aims of this training. During the course, students were trained in basic steps of preparing a taxonomic revision, which included analyzing herbarium specimens, nomenclature, preparation of morphological descriptions, identification keys, distribution maps, and red listing. And these were some of the expected learning outcomes, so as well as learning taxonomy and its relevance and creation of taxonomic networks, high on the priority list came managing of herbarium collections as an important resource for plant taxonomy and therefore for conservation and ecology. Participants were selected from 264 applications received from 23 different nationalities of the African Union. Selection criteria were based on experience in taxonomy and conservation, potential to deliver scientific outputs, potential for expanding professional networks, and their passions for the training. Affiliations included universities, research institutions, botanical gardens, nature parks, museums, herbaria, governmental departments, and environmental consultants. So opposite to what we are more used to, which is apprehending content at school with some exercises or homework to do at home afterwards, a hybrid model of a flipped classroom was used in teaching, where at home, first, you were apprehending content, and later at school or on the course with teachers, you were doing the group work, practical exercises, and receive one-to-one mentoring. I was involved in the practical module of this course with 4 other lecturers, 2 from Kew and 2 from Ghana, which included taxonomic work in a herbarium. And this was happening here. This is Ghana Herbarium. It's a collection of well-organized specimens, mostly from Ghana, but also from neighboring countries of West Africa. As it's a university herbarium, it's visited mostly by students or young professionals to help identify plants and has a lot of potential. Its improvement, upgrade, preservation and continuous expansion as well as use is essential to help deliver flora of Ghana, which doesn't exist yet and is currently priority for this country, and to enhance taxonomic capacity in the country. We also organized a one-day field trip to a beautiful local reserve called Shai Hills to give tips on plant and data collecting in the field and explained various drying techniques and post-collecting processing of collections. Final assessment consisted of a taxonomic revision of genus Ipomea of Convolvulaceae. Bulk of the revision was actually done during the course, and the group stayed in touch after the course to finalize it for publishing. After the course, we collected the feedback, which was very positive. You can see a couple of responses on this slide, highlighting the usefulness of the course, in particular practical skills gained from the herbarium and from the field. And here are the main outcomes of this training. In addition to training 15 plant taxonomists, which was a great group of professionals and very committed, thanks to them, the next 2 outcomes were also successful. These were the taxonomic revision of 28 species of Ipomea from Ghana, and the African Taxonomist Network was formed. This was initiated by the course participants with a mission fostering the next generation of taxonomists to bridge the generational gap and revitalize the relevance of taxonomy in Africa for the future. This network meets regularly online, has a large presence on social media, and is still actively looking for members. So if anyone here is keen to join, here are the group details, or you can contact me. Ghana Herbarium is not fully digitized. It is suffering from underfunding and has only 1 technician. We supported raising profile of this herbarium on social media. So here is the ex-Twitter profile to follow them for updates. Another example is forming links between Kew and African institutions of higher education to further collaboration. One of the examples of this collaboration is also the EATFAT conference, which is being organized in Ghana in 2025, with support from Kew Africa researchers. To support the herbarium further, we submitted for a grant, the IPT Biodiversity Challenge grant of $10,000 to Ghana Herbarium was awarded in 2022. This grant enabled acquiring essential plant and data collecting and drying equipment, including a new drying oven, herbarium curation materials, and publications such as the Herbarium Handbook. These were sourced in Ghana, if possible, or abroad. Acquiring material wasn't without its challenges. Grant applications are time-consuming with unguaranteed outcomes. In addition, we were handling currency exchange and multiple accounts in different currencies. Purchasing materials from abroad meant searching online in various countries and shipping from these. Packing materials safely for transport involved weighing and measuring, getting shipping quotes and booking shipping. Shipping goods to Ghana included sorting out the correct paperwork and paying import duties. We also learned that it's only possible to ship parcels to the airport in Ghana, Accra, Ghana, from where our partners had to collect the shipment themselves. Despite these challenges, we managed to ship the drying oven, and you can see it in use here. So it's there. If anyone would like to chat further, please get in touch. But finally, the course participants benefited by engaging with mentors, networking and exchanging ideas and forming links with individuals with similar research interests. In the follow-up survey, all participants reported this course made them consider a career or future studies in plant taxonomy, and 80% secured a new job or a student position in plant taxonomy 2 years on. In addition, all listed several positive impacts of the course on their career. And here are a couple of their responses. From the feedback 2 years on, participants gained practical skills, got to network and solve challenging problems. This not only opened doors to new opportunities for them, but also was also a useful experience in handling and caring for their herbarium specimens, collecting additional specimens and pressing and mounting them too. This course was then also run in Americas, Bolivia and Asia, Indonesia. We are hoping for similarly positive outcomes. And further funding was then secured to run this course in Kenya next year. Here is a promotional leaflet for it. Unfortunately, the deadline has just passed. Lastly, I would like to thank all course participants, Q colleagues and collaborators, University of Ghana and RBGQ, who started us off, Schroeder Trust and Malincro Foundation for funding the course, IAPT for the Small Collections Grant, and Bentham Moxon Trust for enabling a trip to this conference to present this to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions in the room? In the chat, maybe? No? No. I do have a question. I was wondering, in which language has been, the courses was done in English?
Yeah, the whole course was done in English.
Okay.
English is one of the main languages in Ghana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We do have some time. Thanks, Siobhan.
So one of the questions I had was, sorry, yes, yeah. One of the questions I had from, I was watching outside over there because it's. Could Schmidt or Tadwig offer the people on your course the opportunity to come to a conference like this? I mean, I think personally, you guys should really think about that when you've got such an amazing uptake and such an amazing impact, like 80% is just huge, that institutions like Schmidt and Tadwig should really help develop those people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure this will be very welcomed, and I can pass the details, any details to the course participants or to the African Taxonomist Network.
I know Spinach does have some programs for bringing people here, and at the Chicago meeting, we had a couple of folks from South Africa come, and there's some, if you're willing to present an abstract or something like that, there's some funding opportunities. So it should be all up on the webpage.
I think we've had people from Ghana in the past at our meetings.
Tadwig has certainly had, so the Biodiversity Next conference that was held back in 2019 had a big grant from the JRS Foundation to bring an entire symposium's worth of people from Africa. And we've been in contact with the JRS Foundation again and are hoping to reinstate that collaboration with them, because I agree, I think it'd be really valuable.
Okay, thanks for those answers.
Thanks, thank you. So we are moving on to our third presenter of today, of this afternoon, Bradley Bishop.
How's it going? So I just want to say thank you all for coming. I know there's a lot of great stuff on at the same time, but it's really much more fun when there's an audience. I also have to thank you all because I'm a social scientist that studies scientists, and without willing participants, there are no data. They are very fascinating taxa, so thank you so much for participating in studies over the years. I also should thank my other co-authors. I have fantastic students at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Jax Fox, Sydney Gavel, Emily Chapin, and we worked with Sarah Kanza at Berkeley at the University of California. And I also have to thank the Institute of Museum and Library Services. IMLS well represented here, and they actually have a webinar coming up on September 9th for anyone in the States interested in pursuing IMLS funding for museums specifically, that I think there should be other opportunities out there. Let's see. Some background: aggregating data from natural history collections and their samples relies on navigating institutional and discipline-specific catalogs and repositories. Certainly, there's now a goal, and this is my first Tadwig, second spinach, so it's been interesting, and I hadn't been in 8 years, just to see how much has changed. Certainly, there's more focus on having machine actionable data. The fair data principles 8 years ago have changed a lot of things as well. Also, new mandates from all the funding agencies in the States and globally, having shifts in what should be shared, things being as open as possible. That sort of mentality. The purpose of the study was to understand curation perceptions and behaviors of physical collections from people who are managing, just to inform cross-disciplinary research data management services and resources. I conducted more focus groups than this, but this is only the bio ones. The 6 focus groups I'm sharing today were from 18 total participants, entomology, 2 herbaria, herpetology, ichthyology collections, and a paleontology focus group as well. They're answering open-ended questions about how their collections were organized, stored, the data collection that got the stuff in the first place, all the metadata, which has been fun to hear about this week, organization, findability, and reuse. The data curation profile is a handy method for anybody who's doing similar research that walks through the entire data life cycle of an object. So it's nice. I've had a couple publications that are very hard to see here, but over the years using this method, it's been useful. The findings, the part that's fun, the results. This is no surprise, but it's been really validating to see all the talks this week and see that, yes, the volume and variety of biodiversity is amazing. And then the information objects that stem from all of these things, again, make it a very complicated world. Someone in the paleontology focus group put it succinctly. They have the entire fossil record from microfossils to the scales of whales and dinosaurs. So that's a lot of different stuff to consider and mess with. Certainly, there's kind of a mess. There's some things that aren't as organized, a huge backlog that people are facing, so that's a challenge too. I had another good quote here. We have a large fruit and cone collection that we're currently rehousing in boxes, and those are all crazy sizes. So as life is so complicated, it's not surprising that it's hard to describe and organize to any of you. This is so sad. Cutting an arapaima in half so it could fit in the tanks that they had. These were things my undergrad's in marketing, so I had no idea about lots and all of these things that people are dealing with. So it's been fascinating to learn. And then etymology, like the millions and millions of things, very, very tough. And then all of the ancillary data, metadata, different imaging and things, that's, I guess, again, mind-boggling for me. Storage, certainly in qualitative research, I'm coding up all of these transcripts, and the things mentioned the most were physical storage, which is a lot of focus of the things this week, and as well as digital storage. So both of these things coming up quite a bit. Sort of that duality, this is a double the work to be managing all of the different information objects and their derivatives came up, different considerations for how to access and use both types of things, even if they're stemming from the same thing. Real not a surprise to anybody here, but to me, it's like, oh, there's sound recordings and all kinds of geospatial data and tissues and a lot of stuff. Obviously, the things mentioned in these focus groups were like Specify, Symbiota, Cernic. You can tell by the kinds of people I was talking to that these are just the common tools that people are using to help make their stuff discoverable and then store at least indexed records of those things. The data types also very numerous, all kinds of things out there. Metadata. So this is my favorite thing, is a class I teach. Also cover research data management, and I am the coordinator for the certificate at our school. So if anybody you know is needing to be upskilled in data analysis and data management plans, that's a useful skills to learn that may not have been covered in your graduate education. But metadata standards, again, everybody's favorite thing. A lot of folks mentioned Darwin Core, obviously. Ichthyology collections cited the georeference tool geolocate, so that's been around for a while now. That comes up a lot. Locality data is fascinating to me too, because so much of this stuff can be obfuscated to protect species, or not just missing, honestly, or at a scale that's not reusable. It's the fitness for use, fitness for purpose issue with some of that stuff was fascinating to me. Yes, but all these other things came up. More organization. Some assigned DOIs for collection. A couple talks this week about that as well. So it's interesting to see how we think through an ID and what's the scale of each thing that needs to be identified, and having that be linkable to all the things. But having this quote from Focus Group 10, a DOI that represents 15,000 tadpoles is still like, oh my gosh, how useful is that? But that's the scale that they're able to do and describe things. And then, the backup of things, that's also key. Here's another good quote. An extreme example from Entomology Focus Group. After 30 years of digitizing, we're about a third of the way through digitizing our collection. So obviously there's a lot more work to do. Job security is how people usually position that, but I think there should be a lot more resources. Findability, something that comes up, like if you can't be found, you can't be used, and a lot of science can be answered if more things are findable. So people walk through, the different ways that you make collections as findable as possible. Some in the focus groups pointed out there's access issues to get at older versions of data and having to keep older versions of software and things to make sure that they're still able to open up older file formats. The nightmare stories from moving things from Excel to real databases was, as an information scientist, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is scary. There's a lot of stuff out there that's really in danger of being lost forever. So thank you all for all the work you do to help save what has already been collected. Yes, maps, drawings, floppy disks, film, punch cards. It's sort of a really long tail list of all the things that you all see every day. Some management portals that were mentioned, again, nothing surprising, GBIF, Specify, iDigBio, VertNet, Arctos, folks with presences here, TaxonWorks, FishNet. Most participants did mention having their own searchable database hosted on websites. So it is nice to sort of, for discovery, to be able to be found in multiple different places. All focus groups were then asked the question, is your collection findable? And especially thinking of the difference between physical and digital access to things, quite a few folks just said no, not at all. Because you can find stuff if you're in the space, and that is a real key to all of this, is that this dream of having fair data principles and machine actionable data for all this stuff has an assumption built in it that a lot of things were born digital. So obviously those life sciences, health, social science data, those things are closer to that, but a lot more work has to happen on the back end to make this physical collections and samples more accessible and findable as well. Let's see. Collection level metadata allows potential users to know general information about a collection, but not at the granularity that a machine might need and a lot of your users. Several participants expressed that items could be accessed, but not as findable, since potential users would need to know who to contact and where the items may be. So humans have limited capacity, they're terminal, so it is key that we have these things sort of saved in other infrastructure beyond the curator that knows where that thing is, that one thing. Another good quote from Focus Group 7, literally have to go to the cabinet, open it up, and look and see if the thing is there. So you have to talk to a human who explains to you how to find things. So that's, again, not a surprise to anybody in the room, but it's still a lot more work to do. Some barriers and solutions. Results indicate that these natural history collection managers use global metadata. So these are real positive things. Storage standards, all the work that Tadwig and everybody else in Spinach have been doing to increase discoverability. Reuse of these objects and associated collections require more investment in personnel. So building that human capacity, I think, has been a theme through some of these talks. As well as sort of retooling the cyber infrastructure that's been highly invested in to work for the future and enhance reusability of these collections. I would say increasing the standardization of metadata and data storage across collections, as well as reinforcing requirements, should improve the findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of them, and increase the value of these invaluable resources. So I think I just, again, want to acknowledge IMLS for sure, leave time for questions, and publicly thank Andrea Thomer, Associate Professor at the University of Arizona iSchool. Some of you may know her. She was very helpful and instrumental in helping recruit participants. And again, thanks to everybody who participated. There's a couple short papers, but I still have to write up the big one because it also includes focus groups from archaeology, forensic anthropology, and a lot of the geosciences people too, because I think like at that level, there's interesting questions about how to make everything interoperable across all of the exact sciences. So, but thank you, and I know it's one more talk, right? So, are we cool? I'm still on yellow. I have 1 minute. Time for a question, or two well-phrased questions. Okay. Thanks. All right. Yes.
I won't go up to the microphone because it's too hard.
The people online will need to hear you.
I noticed that there was one focus group they were missing, is invertebrate zoology as a discipline.
Yes. No, I know. I'm missing a lot of life. That's for sure. That's a resources question. It says my two students were most interested, like a lot of people, in paleontology. So I need to obviously expand, and it'd be great to have additional resources to talk to all the taxa that are missing. Because yes, I feel like the parallels between some of the different types of physical collections and how they're managed and made digitized and accessible is just there's more to learn. But I definitely hit saturation with the time I had for this study. But thanks. Yes, what else? Anything else? I'm sort of...
Did you ask at all about what the people in the focus groups, what they wished they knew before they started?
It would be brilliant to have this sort of, if you had a magic wand question at the end of all of my studies, but I don't have that kind of foresight. There was some open-ended discussion, and it all points back to resources. It's not a surprise to anybody that it's just like this time is the most evil construct, and we only have so much of it, as I'm read now. So I'm happy to talk to other folks and share some swag from the University of Tennessee. We've got really handy paper clips that I don't want to take back. All right, thank you all.
Thanks. So our last speaker of this session, Matt Smith.
Yeah, and thank you, first of all, for letting me do a lightning talk in this one. That'll be really good. So, hello, my name is Matthew Schmidt. I'm from the California Academy of Sciences, where I'm a curatorial assistant. Thanks. Perfect. And today I'm going to talk to you about the benefits and drawbacks of multi-departmental curatorial assistants, which I am one. So at the California Academy of Sciences and many other natural history museums, grant funding is often temporary or could be quite small. So as a result, part-time, on-call, and temporary positions seem to become more prevalent and the norm in some institutions. While this may seem like the best direct approach to hiring, it typically is at some expense to the employee who could be left with a smaller salary or who may be let off at the end of the contract. Ultimately, the museum itself may be impacted, having to train and invest in someone who will eventually leave. So at the California Academy of Sciences, we have started to address this issue with an unconventional role, the floater. This refers to someone who floats between departments throughout the year, utilizing small pockets of funding and moving multiple projects forward. So you may be thinking that this sounds a little complicated. Well, it was. This table shows my workload between departments since I started working at Cal Academy a year and a half ago. Each highlighted cell represents a week that I worked in a specific department, with the total hours adding up to 40 hours per week. Unfortunately, I couldn't parse it out, so some of these I might just work one day that week, but it seems to represent what I was trying to get across. So the 4 departments that I worked in were ichthyology, ornithology, mammalogy, herpetology, and invertebrate zoology. In these 4 departments, I had multiple roles and responsibilities, ranging across 8 projects and pay codes. Some of the work was on call, which was out in the field. We would do marine mammal responses and do necropsies. Some of the work was field work. We were collecting reptiles and amphibians in the desert. Some of the work was in the collection, cataloging, housing, and shipping out loans of coral reef fishes. And then some of the work was in the database. We were updating identifications on North Pacific marine invertebrates. But the most important thing to take away from this is that one cross-trained employee could fill all of these roles, avoiding the underutilization of grant funds, the need to cut some of these smaller projects, or the requirement of multiple part-time staff. Additionally, this unconventional position provided a lot of other benefits, including a line of direct interdepartmental communication, sharing techniques and skills between departments. This was especially convenient as a lot of our departments share the same collection management system and also similar collection layouts. So if I notice more efficient techniques or approaches in one department, I could sort of bring those over to the other departments if they weren't already initiated there. We're able to say yes to more projects since there's less concern about finding somebody in the short term. And it can save time and money not having to reteach institutional information, database navigation, or basic curatorial procedures for each position. So if you're thinking this sounds great, where do I start? That's also complicated. This is where some of the potential drawbacks come into play. Do you have the workload to support this role? You'll need to confirm funding sources and longevity so the employee isn't stuck having to reduce hours unexpectedly. Right now, we had I think we usually have about 10 months of confirmed funding for me, which is fine, and then there's little pockets of unconfirmed in the future. Do you have a manager to sponsor this role? You'll need a department with more flexible funding to absorb changes between the projects and manage the employee. This manager needs to be willing to take on the chaos that my timesheets can become. So shout out to Mo Flannery, the O&M collection manager. She's doing great. Is HR and payroll supportive in overseeing this employee's paychecks and benefits? This can be tricky, especially when it comes to splitting benefits between multiple departments and removing cost centers as projects come to a close. But it's usually easier to do that than hire a brand new person each time. So are all departments on board? Multiple meetings will be required to address scheduling priorities and flexibilities. The managers need to be collaborative and ready to work together, which luckily we have plenty of collection managers and curators that were willing to do that at CAS. And finally, is there an individual who might be well suited for this position? The floater needs to be good at time management and multitasking, a good communicator, but most importantly, just somebody that wants to learn in different departments and across different disciplines. Searching for the candidate internally can be the best option because you already have a reference to the employee's work ethic and applicable qualities. At Cal Academy, the floaters that I spoke to seemed like all of them started just in one department or one temporary position, and then if they excelled, they were, their work was expanded into multiple departments, and it went up from there. So for me, the benefits were increasing my exposure to new subject matter and expanding upon my skill set, and that heavily outweighed the lack of stability that a more traditional full-time museum position could provide. So overall, the energy and time expended upfront to establish a role like this at your institution can benefit both employee and employer. So before you ask me, what department do you work in? It's complicated. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions in the room?
How far in advance did you know what department you were working in? Like sometimes there was 3 and sometimes it was just for a week at one. Did you know like weeks in advance, or did you get to work on Monday and they were like, hey, great, you're going to be over here today?
I think it was a little bit of each. Yeah, some of the time it was very nice and we'd have a project planned out 4 or 5 months in advance and I knew that I would be covered then. But other times it'd be like, we got $2,000 to spend in the next week. Can you come over here for like a little bit? So it was a little bit of each. But it's nice to have somebody just in the office that you can approach and then schedule with.
And then it looked like you might have had like 3 hours. Hey, there's a whale that's washed up on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. So
get your waders.
some of those little spots were the on-call work. So which also is great to just have somebody there. Because if you had to hire somebody else on call, they might just say no. But if I'm in the office, they know I'm not busy. So.
Hey, Matt. I'm just curious what your background actually is in. And then did you, from this experience, do you feel a change in your feelings of what you're studying or what you're doing, I guess?
No, that's a great question. Yeah, my background is in fisheries biology. So I spent a lot of time in the field working with that. But I think, I love field work, but being able to see that in different departments, going herping, it's great, love it. So I love working in the field, and I think seeing the other aspects of it, the collection work and the database work is great because now I have a full picture and I know, when I'm out in the field, I know what is the most important to bring back for the data. So. Oh, no. Oh, well, it's all great. You get to learn everything. That's why I have this job. I love learning everything. So.
So that's excellent.
Is this on? Okay. It sounds like each department pays you from their own budget. So this might be a HR question. If you go on vacation, how does that work?
Those are good questions. And we would usually split it based on the week. So we would split up those hours. If I was working for 2 departments that week in like a 60-40 split, those vacation hours would be split up. So it can be a nightmare. So, but.
All right, thank you.
We still have 5 more minutes, and I have been writing down interactive discussion questions. So whoever's on the door, don't let them out because we've got to talk now. You've got to talk. You're stuck in here for another 5 minutes, telling me things. So I was just reflecting on that. That's a great talk to segue. Oh, someone's escaping. Into the question that I had already come up with, which is that universities do a lot of training, museum studies training, or fisheries biology, or biology degrees, whatever. Yet it sounds like a lot of your training you wouldn't have gotten at a university through, and a lot of it's going to be on the ground. So the question is, whoever's doing that training, who in the room, either who needs the training or is teaching the training, what's the one topic that we think that should be covered? What in terms of becoming a versatile collections professional, whether it's in collection management or conservation or data management, what would you have liked to have learned that you didn't, or had to learn on the job because that was just not offered in the organisation that you were in, or in the university course that you did? Come on, I can't believe you all got everything you needed to know from your university course.
So I work at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, and I know there's a lot of disciplines out there, but when I'm doing hiring, the number one thing I look for is attention to detail. Everything else can be taught, learned. You can learn taxonomy, you can learn different animals, different plants, whatever, but you've got to have attention to detail.
I love talking about this. How do you test for that? Like, what do you give to someone to evaluate whether they have attention to detail?
Siobhan.
Sometimes we'll have small contracts that people come in, it's kind of, for a small amount of money, just to kind of test and see how you can do. So.
I've got a request from me to the entire community. I would like people to learn about copyright. They are copyright. Everyone in this room generates copyrighted content. You've done it today when you took a photo. You do it in your work, and therefore it's more likely than not to belong to your organisation. And if you want to link things and, importantly, reuse content more widely, link it more widely, it has to have an open licence so that everyone can reuse it. And a lot of your institutions do not. If it's a non-commercial, i.e. an NC licence, it is a closed licence. I've seen slide decks today that have NC, and I have and am going to breach that licence by sharing those images, possibly commercially, because I don't know whether it's classed commercially or not. But I'm going to do it because I think the knowledge that people are sharing is important to share with other people. So, and I'm taking a risk doing that. So I would like the room to educate themselves on copyright and reuse licenses. That's what I would like.
Hello. I would like everybody to know and learn about conservation. So that you stop gluing things with things I cannot undo later. Please stop it. No, but seriously speaking, yes, stop gluing things, but also the fact that again, I know not all institutions can hire a conservator, full-time, et cetera, but knowing that there are conservators out there that you can hire even for short periods to do the things that need to be done is a great thing. And we will repeat this a million times if we need to in this conference, as many times as we have to, because we are a fantastic resource. Please use us. We are very generous with our time. And yes, please stop gluing things with super glue and Elmer's glue and all that stuff. Please throw it out as soon as you go home. Thank you.
So as a collections manager, I almost taught myself everything in the herbarium collection. And I have adapted protocols from all different collections. Sorry, I still glue. But access to resources is the hardest thing. My museum studies, or the museum studies major at Rutgers University, is all about art. And it had nothing in their course description that would relate back to natural history collections in a way that I could use it. So access to resources like when not to use glue, and what glues to definitely not use, and alternatives, because you also have to think about Elmer's glue, sure, for the people that do use glue, Missouri Botanical type glue is probably better than Elmer's glue, but what if you can't pay $100 for a gallon of glue?
Cheaper glue.
Yeah, I know. That's my 2 cents.
So I would actually encourage, one thing that my career track specifically focused on the scientific classes and kind of museum studies. One thing I wish I had paid more attention to was more kind of leadership management classes and the soft skills that go along with working with other people. I am naturally not a great socializer. I had to learn how to socialize with other people. And so now that I am a manager and I manage people, one of the things I've really put a lot of focus on, and my institution also encourages their managers to do, is to get manager training. But even if you are not going to be a manager, just building your soft skills on working with others in a team, working across departments, because in the we also at my institution have assistants who are shared across departments, and I enjoy chatting with them to say, what is it like having multiple managers? How different are their personalities that you have to, from week to week, day to day, be like, all right, I'm working with this person today. I know that their personality is like this, but I'm working with this person tomorrow. They have a completely different personality and management style. So I had to be ready for that mentally. So just taking courses through like LinkedIn or something. There are some free courses. If you are fortunate to have an institution with a LinkedIn license, please take advantage of it. I certainly have. But work on those softer skills that are not necessarily discipline specific.
Oh, I had soft skills on my bingo card as well as licensing, but not glue. But thank you all. Hopefully this conversation keeps going on the rest of the day and tomorrow.
Thank you so much for everyone for attending the session, and please enjoy some afternoon tea and then the last session of the day, and then off to the conference dinner, which hopefully will be a beach party outside on the beach in the rain.